Every team has one goal in mind. The Creston Boys Basketball team in 1996 and 97 were no different. In fact, they had just missed out on the ultimate goal 1 year prior. As the Panthers headed into that 96-97 season, there was only one thing on their mind, and they wouldn't settle for anything less: a state championship. And that is where our story begins. When you think of the 1997 Creston State Championship boys basketball team, what word comes to mind?
Just a great group of guys.
I can't limit it to one word, but it's one thought. The way they captured the entire community.
I thought was as resilient a team that I've ever seen.
One word would simply be special.
Special. Seems fitting. The 1996-97 team was a special one. In fact, the year 97 was important. Titanic was the highest grossing movie at the movie theater box office, and the Creston Panthers were headed to a state championship basketball game for the first time in over 40 years. Creston had not won a state title since 1939 and had their best shot to do so in 97. Team leaders Kyle McCann and Ben Gerleman had basically set every school record yet in history, but they had one goal they wanted to achieve before their high school career was over.
A lot of it was just staying healthy was one thing, making sure that we had everyone involved. Kyle and I probably got the most recognition from everything. But if we didn't have, a healthy Brady Steenhook, a healthy Eric Owens, a healthy Jeff Finn, a healthy Ryan Taylor, a healthy Connor Reed, if we didn't have all those healthy, we never would have been the team that we ended up being. So having good health was part of it, but, just knowing that we had unfinished business and that how close we were, really kind of fueled us into that first 2 weeks of practice. And they were intense. And, I think my dad as the coach probably was harder on us those 2 weeks than maybe he ever was. And so just a lot of that unfinished business and knowing how close we were and wanting to finish on top was probably what drove us, especially early in the season.
Coach Mike Gerleman knew the year would be spectacular, and he trusted his team to take care of business on the floor so they could achieve that ultimate goal.
We always have a team meeting in my classroom before we start practice, and fill out some information sheets and go over, set some team goals and talk about the way we hope things would go. And we were on a mission. After the 96 finish, third place where we beat Oskaloosa, we had just lost narrowly to Western Christian, 62-60, and they won the title in that year. And these guys were confident, and they were. It was a goal. They were going to win the state. And we even talked about it some when they were way down in the grades.
In 97, there's no doubt the Panthers were not going to be denied in this basketball game. They were number one in the state. They had finished third the year before, brought back two workhorses in McCann and Gerleman, along with a host of seniors and upperclassmen. Unfortunately, early in the season, seventh game of the year, they had a minor setback.
We lost that game early. And we all probably, we didn't play very well that game, and it was a double overtime game. And just the fact that we erased that memory late in the season and really, avenged that loss in a convincing fashion. I don't think we ever thought that we wouldn't win, but at the same time, as the state tournament goes and you're kind of stuck in your area of the state and you really don't get to see a lot of the rest of this, there's always that sense of uncertainty of what might happen, which I think helped maintain our focus, especially as we got to the state tournament.
I believe that I recapped some of the stuff in some of the scrapbooks I've got, and I think it was Kyle McCann said that that loss against Atlantic woke him up. And after that, it was just a really good run after that particular loss. And they went, that was a non-conference game, by the way. And Creston went on and won the conference 10-0, and they won the Hawkeye 10 at that time.
The Panthers fell to Hawkeye 10 rival Atlantic in Creston. This is a non-conference matchup, though, which meant the Panthers still had an opportunity to pick themselves up, win a Hawkeye 10 conference championship, because they had to go to Atlantic and play them later on.
The doubt crept up early because in their 7th game at home, when we thought we were the world beaters, really, Atlantic beat them. And I believe Steve Blazek from Creston was Atlantic's coach then. Yes. And Jerome Hogue, it was a Hoig that got crazy hot from 3-point range and beat Creston. And that's the time when assistant Matt Summers didn't want doubt to creep into their heads and wrote all the seniors a letter basically verifying you are the best and you will show it. Everyone has a night where that happens. And they got serious in practice. And when they went up and played Atlantic for what would become the Hawkeye 10 championship, they beat them like 88-66. They just rolled.
Yes, that game was played at our place, and it was a non-conference game. We played Atlantic twice. The conference championship was going to be decided up in Atlantic, the last game of the season. And I didn't want them to have much on us. That team used a vaunted half-court trap press that was just very tough to break. And so we didn't do anything in that game except play straight man-to-man. They had a couple of excellent players, and they were able to beat us by 1 basket, but we didn't do anything. And so that loss is on the coach. But I felt that loss was the biggest reason why we won the state championship, because we practiced twice as hard, knowing that, and I used it a little bit, and to get them motivated. And after that, there was nobody who was going to beat those boys, and I knew that, and it was actually a loss was a plus.
Even with the loss, Panthers were primed for a run at history and ultimate glory. They rattled off 14 straight wins en route to making their championship run to Des Moines and Veterans Auditorium for the state tournament. This team was set, but had been together for a long time and knew how well they played together. In fact, they played in grade school together before they were even stars on the stage at Veterans Auditorium.
They all followed the teams at the high school. They were at all the games, to follow the progression of the guys. And, Creston's had some very good teams in the early 90s with Coach Belger and his sons. And there was a Doug Slapia, a 6'7" kid who was awfully good. And some other kids that we had good teams, and they were fun to watch. And they just got used to seeing that, and they were able to take it one step further.
The one dynamic that couldn't be missed is the fact that the star player, Ben Gerleman, and his dad, Mike Gerleman, were a father-son duo, not only on the basketball floor, but in life as well. They were the coaches, and the coach's best player, as well as the coach's kid, was a part of it too. That was an interesting play out, and how that answer might ask, well, let's ask Ben.
It was different. I never addressed him in practice. I never would ask him questions. I would never question him. And a lot of it was simply, I had a hard time knowing what to call him. When I was at practice, do I call him dad? Do I call him coach? And so I took the approach of, I'm just not going to address him. I'm not going to ask him questions. I'm just going to do what he tells me to do. And if I needed clarification on something, I would do it outside of the group. And he was good about it. I thought he was really hard on me, which was completely fine. I felt like I took maybe more criticism from him than I maybe needed to or deserved. But at the same time, it's part of being the coach's kid. And so I kind of accepted that. And I'm learning full well what he went through now as I coach, the team I coach now with my son playing. So it's kind of coming full circle for me.
Nonetheless, they had been settled out and battle-tested from a young age and showed that through their high school years. Falling short of state in 1995, falling just short of playing for a state title in 1996, they wanted to take the next step and ultimately make it to a state championship game, and not only just make it, but they wanted to win the whole thing. 1997 seemed like it was the year the team was loaded, and there was no doubt the Panthers couldn't go to Vets Auditorium and bring home what they had achieved to set out to do.
The dominance of them able to score, they were averaging 25 points, like you say, 82 points a game, but for the team. And they were averaging probably 50. I guess it would be. I can't exactly remember all the stats, but of course you had to have a cast of other starters, Brady Steenhook and Dan and Kyle there with Connor Reed, Jeff Finn, and Eric Owens. Those guys did a great job, as well as Connor Reed off the bench, and what a great job they did. But when you're scoring 82 points, the ball game was basically over in the third quarter.
The year before, I don't know if I told you how close Creston was to 2 consecutive state championships.
Mm-hmm.
The year before, down 62-60, last second shot from the baseline, I think by McCann. I can't remember if it was a 2 or a 3, but it rolled on the rim and didn't go in. They rolled in the third place game, so they won their final game 2 years in a row. And then the year before that, Brian Gerleman was a senior on the team that lost a really close sub-state final to Carroll Kemper. So it was almost a 3-year run.
Panthers rolled through the state tournament, dominating both of their first 2 games at the state tournament. They never had many struggles and got to see a chance to take on Pella, who they had just beaten the previous year to even get to state, and a lot of great memories come up from that ball game included.
The year before when they qualified for state, and they were 19 points behind Pella, that team, at Southeast Polk. I was in that gym. I remember that. And to come back from 19 down in the fourth quarter and win 84-82, I believe, to go to state for the first time in 47 years, that was just a crazy Creston crowd reaction too. And that team just had such a knack for those kind of moments, It was a stack right by the inbounds thrower. And McCann came looping around from somewhere in that stack to go behind the double screen, basically, and just went streaking down court. And it was probably Ben, because he was such a good passer. Threw it to Ben on the run, and McCann would catch it and basically shoot a little floater and made the winning shot with time running out to beat him by 2. Yeah, it was tied at that time because they beat him by 2.
It was a rematch the Dutch wanted, and the chance the Panthers had dreamed of. Creston had gotten its trip to the state championship game, but was yet to achieve the ultimate goal. That morning prior to the game, Coach Gerleman was in his classroom preparing for the night, and prior to leaving, he walked through the Creston High School Commons, saw the picture of the 1939 state championship team, and had this to say.
I went up to my classroom in the high school to get some materials and just go over some things. And I looked up at the wall in the Commons. And I said to myself, these boys' pictures are going to go right up on that wall as state champions by the end of the day. And I didn't tell anybody, but that was in my head. And
before the game, I can't say that I can remember a whole lot other than just a sense of calm. Like, when you go into a game and no matter what, it's the end, that game's different. It's different because, in a sense, it almost relieves a little bit of the pressure that, no matter what happens tonight, this is it. And so that feeling, I thought, is something I remember of, it's going to be over. And at the same time, I just felt like our guys were confident. I thought we were just ready for the moment. And leading up to the game, that's about all I can remember, to be honest. It's quite the blur. Pretty much the game and everything after the game, remember that very well, very vividly. But leading up, just that sense of calm, like, it's going to be over. And, at the end of it, we were going to be holding up the big trophy.
Confidence was high. The Panthers carried over, took on the Dutch for a chance at ultimate glory. One thing many people talked about during this time for the Creston community was the fan base that the Panthers brought to nearly every contest, and that night in Des Moines was simply no different.
Some of the things that I remember from that group, and the community got way behind it, because the stands were packed in the JV game, so they could get a seat for the varsity.
But Creston High School regular season games that year, you had to get there by around halftime of the JV game to get a seat. Okay. Mike Peters was here then and had that pet band cranking up Jump by Van Halen when McCann and those guys would come out on the floor and the place would go nuts. It was totally packed. There were people standing in the corners for a regular season game. So you can imagine for the tournament run how early you had to get there. And but yet, the players fed off that.
Of course, we had such a tremendous following. We would take over a gym when we go on the road, and all these fans would come so early. And like when we were playing at home, if you didn't get to our gym by halftime of the JV game, you didn't get in. They would not let you in because it was overcrowded. A few of them tried to watch from the commons. They'd open them double doors, which probably wasn't the best, but they could see a little bit. And I know when we went to Valley for that sub-state that year, we're playing Nevada. We got there and we took a whole side and half of another. And Nevada walks in about 40 minutes later, and they just could not believe it, what they were getting into. And of course, we got after them pretty good, and they were a good team. But our fans, I've never seen anything like it. High school to have that many fans there that early. We had to go to a card system for some of our plays and defenses because I was fairly loud as a coach yelling. They couldn't hear me, so we had to hold cards up because the crowd would just be so loud, and it was intense. And it just fed right into the way our guys played.
Those who attended that state championship game, they were in for a special treat.
2 champions have been crowned, 2 more will be tonight at the wrap-up of the 97 Boys State Basketball Tournament. In 3A, it's Creston against Dekalb, followed by the 4A matchup between the defending champ Mason City and Sioux City West. Good evening from the Big Barn in Des Moines. For Creston, the final game for a truly dynamic duo. We're talking about Kyle McCann and Ben Gerleman. First of all, McCann, scoring machine of 30 points a game.
Well, he's a great scorer because he's 6'5" and he really plays guard, but he rebounds like a center, so he can score inside, medium, and long range. Very difficult for another team to match up with him.
He's headed for Iowa on a football scholarship. His favorite receiver in his high school career was Ben Gerleman, and they also make a nice tandem on the basketball court.
They must have a good deal because in basketball, McCann is the favorite receiver for Gerleman because he's the point guard and he throws the ball to McCann, but he also averages 20 points a game too.
The Creston Panthers only lost to Atlantic, 7th game of the year. Since then, they have won 16 straight. The Pella Dutch lost only 3. They come in at 21-3. Let's meet the players. Let's go downstairs with the public address announcer.
Pella knew they had their hands full with Gerleman, who was set as the all-time assist leader in Creston Community School history, and Kyle McCann, who averaged 30 points per game. The duo combined averaged 50. The Panthers had other key guys as well who started. Aggressive Jeff Finn, who was on defense and was very solid there. In the middle, they saw big man Eric Owens, and then the quick, speedy guard, Brady Steenhoek. Each had their own little niche, and each dominated the game their own way.
That's kind of how our group always played. Even dating back to when we were in 5th and 6th grade, it seemed like, Kyle and I would maybe get a bigger share of the load. But at the same time, while we got the recognition and we carried a lot of that load, I said this before, we wouldn't have been who we were without Jeff Finn and Eric Owens and Brady Stainhook and Ryan Taylor and Todd Stalker. And we just wouldn't have been who we were without them. And when you're a kid and you're growing up, maybe we didn't realize it and say it as much as we needed to then. But, as we look back, I'm in the profession, of coaching, that how much I realized that those kids were almost the glue that held us together at times, even when there was a little doubt that creeped in. Those kids were so important, and we tried to do the best we could with, being a 17, 18-year-old of, how do you manage that? But, and I would say that our parents had a big role in that as well. My parents, Kyle's parents, the rest of the parents of that senior group really worked hard to create a bond of team. And that can't go unspoken.
Despite all the accolades prior to the game and all the pomp and circumstance behind it, it hadn't tipped off yet, and the Panthers still had one last hurdle they needed to jump to ultimately receive the ultimate glory they had set out to get at the beginning of the year.
It's time for basketball.
During the 97 season, the Panthers were known to be the team who was slow starting out and struggled to get going in the first half of games, and something kind of set in right out of the gate for the Panthers as well.
I kind of look at the way, you watch sports throughout the years, and you take a look at the championship teams, whether it's NBA or NFL, whatever, the resiliency of those teams, whether they start out slow, and that's basically what the Creston Panthers did in their tournament run, was start out each one of those games pretty slow. And they came back with a lot of resilience and bounced back and went on a lot of big runs during that tournament run there, whether it was at Valley High School or Indianola or at Betts Auditorium. They started pretty slow some of those games.
The Dutch led the first quarter final score, but then it was the Panthers leading by 5 at the break and cruised into the second half where they really turned it on.
We were known for that third quarter. If we could be even close, if it was a close game, we would come out and we might put a 8-0, 10-0, 12-0 run on you with that half-court trap. See, it takes a while for that half-court trap to kick in, especially in the big court up at Des Moines. So we had to make a few adjustments, and once they made those adjustments, we get a few steals, and, Kyle and Bennett go down and dunk it. And back then, that was a fairly big deal. And, boy, got the crowd in it and got our team in it, and it was fun.
Unlike the first half and their slow starts, the Panthers were best during the third quarter, and on this night in March, they were no different. The Panthers went on to win the third quarter 22-13, but that was not even near the story of the quarter. In fact, it was an unbelievable display of passing, scoring, and defense, the fundamentals of basketball, and the Panthers did all three of them well in that state championship game. The play that nearly broke the Dutch, though, happened about midway through the quarter, and it saw, a very well-known face to the Creston community by the name of Kyle McCann rise up and do something many people cheer for at the state tournament.
Bogart, barking at a set play. Comes off the pick by Van Bart.
Oh, great play.
McCann.
Wow, two great athletic plays. A steal where he was actually behind the offensive player.
I think there was some revenge in that dunk because the year earlier, in the semifinal game, the state tournament game in 96, he missed a dunk. And I think he really, and that two-handed dunk that he put in the championship game was an exclamation point at his effort at Betts Auditorium.
McCann, I think Larry Morgan on TV said, McCann came out of nowhere. And he swooped in and took the ball up away from Kyle Korver right around half court. Korver turns around, tries to chase him, but McCann could get going. He went down and put that two-handed stuff down, and we had our photographer, Jeff Young, get a great shot of that dunk. And the crowd just went nuts.
McCann got the steal from behind, blows right past the NBA superstar now in Kyle Korver. He rose up with two hands, slams it home, and knew at that point they were on their way, but McCann was not out of highlights just yet.
Well, obviously they're going to take one shot here, and they'd like nothing better than to get a penetrate pitch for a three-point shot and make this an 8-point game.
To get right there back in his hands, you think?
And it did.
The other way, here comes McCann. Bogart's trying to stop him. McCann at the horn.
And I just said it, they were going to hold it to the end, but they didn't. They shot it with 4 seconds and gave McCann a chance to come down. That's a huge basket for Creston.
After 3, Creston 55, Pella 41. We'll be back after this word from your local station.
And we took off in that third quarter and got a good run on them. And to finalize the third quarter, Kyle, they were going for one shot, and I can't remember if they shot a little early or we got a steal, but Kyle came down and I was counting off the seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. He pulled up at the 3-point line and swished a 3, and they had 2 or 3 guys back, but their heads just went down. And I think that gave us maybe a double-digit third quarter lead. Mm-hmm. And then we just kept going from there.
One other moment in that game was the end of the third quarter. Creston had a 22-13 third quarter. Pella's best guard took a shot too early. 6 seconds left maybe, took a 3 and missed it. They were trying to get within 9. And somebody got the rebound, put it ahead to McCann. Maybe McCann got his own rebound. Took it down court. Had time to stop at the 3-point line, pull up and shoot in balance and in rhythm, swish the 3-pointer. Now we're up by 14. And it seemed like Pella just like, oh no, we can't keep up with this now at this point. So McCann was so good at those moments too.
That was the dagger. The McCann 3 that gave the Panthers a double-digit lead heading into the final quarter was all they needed, and it was him in the huddle who got the Panthers' mindset right heading to the fourth.
I vividly remember the conversation that Kyle and Kyle had really initiated on the bench, and it was just a striking resemblance to the year before, where at the sub-state game they had a comfortable lead going into that fourth quarter, and you think, oh gosh, we just got to survive, and yep, this is in the bag. So we knew that anything was possible because we had just gone through it with that exact same team the other way. And so it really kind of helped us focus, like, all right, we got to finish the game. We got to come out strong the first 4 minutes of the quarter and really try to put them away. And I thought that conversation, especially that it was Kyle leading it, probably is what really helped us finish the game, especially that first 4.5 minutes, and maintain that lead and really never give them a chance to really come back.
In the fourth quarter, it was a different hero, though, that stepped up and made plays. Bench player Connor Reed found his way onto the floor, who only averaged 4 points per game going into the state finals, and on this night, he was the story of the fourth quarter.
McCann doesn't get the roll, but the ball is right there by Connor Reed.
Yeah, too. Connor Reed. We talked about somebody else stepping up on these two teams to make a difference, and maybe that's Connor Reed tonight.
Gerleman challenged by Van Bart.
Here comes the double team on Gerleman. He avoids it, penetrates inside, and guess who?
It's Connor Reed again.
Good job by Korver.
Again, it's Connor Reed. Reed with 10 in the fourth quarter.
That time Gerleman gave the ball up against the trap, and there's the open man.
And guess who the open man is?
Connor Reed, number 42 from Creston, having a game of his life, and the biggest game of his life. But he put double teaming Kyle and Ben up front high, and Connor Reed came into the ball game. He's only been averaging about 4 points a ball game, and ended up where they were
sagging on Ben and Kyle at the top of the post, and Connor Reed could break to the basket, and I could still see the bounce passes, and Connor putting them up off the glass for 16 points to end the ball game. It was an amazing run for Connor. Connor had only averaged 4 points a ball game, and then he got into the championship ball game, and boom! And that really brought Connor out of his shell. I coached Connor in Little League, and he was kind of a shy kid, and if he'd make a mistake, he'd get down on himself. But Connor came out of his shell that ball game and really became quite an athlete for Creston. Matter of fact, he was instrumental in beating Harlan the next year in football because he made a punt in the rain that stuck Harlan deep in their end of the field, and Connor just did a great job. Came out of his shell and really blossomed after that ball game. He a nice young man.
Right. They weren't going to try. Ben and Kyle were not going to try to deal with the double team. They passed it over to Connor. He was one of our bench players. He happened to be in the game because Jeff Finn had fouled out. So that's how he got in there, and he got him open. And he was explosive. He took a couple of them to the basket, and then he hit probably the rest of them from the outside. But that was quite a deal that they shut those two stars down in the last half of the fourth quarter, but we won by 17.
As the quarter played out, the Panthers never let the game get close. Reality started to set in for Coach Mike Gerleman.
I suppose halfway through the fourth, because then my thoughts turned to what a thrill it would be if I could get all of these guys in the game and actually play. And so I started working my rotations, and I didn't take them all out at once, and they got a hand from the fans. It was really a great deal, and added a couple of sophomores ended up with the last basket and the last rebound. And Corey Gerleman got a basket, and also Brian Bucklin got the rebound to seal it at the end. So, really special, really a highlight, obviously. I would be remiss if I would say of my coaching career.
For Ben, the moment hit him as he came out of the game when little brother Corey replaced him, and he met his father and the other assistant coaches with a giant hug on the sideline as time started to expire.
About the time I came out of the game, when Dad started pulling us seniors and giving us kind of that curtain call, I think that's probably when I realized, you know what, we did it. And it was great to come off the bench and obviously get to see, my dad, and it was my little brother that came in for me. And just seeing my dad, seeing Coach Sommers and Coach Belger and, the rest of the seniors, and, it's just a special time. Just something I'll never forget, no matter how old I get, to walk off the floor into a group of guys that knew we had just done something special. And then you get there and you look out on the floor and you got a bunch of young kids on the floor having a great time, and you look across the floor and our whole fans are going crazy. And, it was surreal and extremely special.
Final buzzer rang. Panthers had defeated Pella 74-57, and the celebration began as the Panther faithful who filled the facility were as loud as ever and picked up their first state championship since 1939.
And our champions, it's 1939 all over again. The Creston Panthers and Coach Gerleman.
There's nothing like getting a trophy and being called state champions. It's even sweeter for those who worked hard to ultimately get there. Not only did the Panthers take home a state championship that night, they also won the 3A Sportsmanship Award, and that was an award that put activities director Kurt Olson into tears. An award to this day that many in the Panther community are still very proud about.
Kurt Olson, the athletic director at that time, I can remember the picture. Maybe it was in the paper. it's around somewhere where he's hugging the cheerleaders and they're all bawling. They're all crying. And it was great. Yeah, it was a super time for his girls. He called them the cheerleaders, and of course the fans, as you can imagine, were just amazing.
What followed the celebration at Veterans Auditorium was one to never forget for many people. The celebration in Creston was unlike any other, and at midnight, the high school gym was completely full just to greet the team home. Many of the players and coaches had a chance to talk, but one speech stood out above all, according to Larry Peterson.
Another great quote from Brady Steenhook. Brady was a great kid to interview. Because at the reception in the gym afterwards, all the seniors were asked to speak, and he started his presentation to the public that night by just imitating what the Pella student crowd had chanted the night before, or the 2 nights before the semifinal, and chanting, "We want Creston. We want Creston." And he did that for the crowd there, and then he just stopped and shook his head. That just kills me.
Following the game, many of the lasting memories have stuck with the team. Even after so many years, they still connect and can still get together when the opportunity arises.
Guys have really remained fairly close. It's 23 years ago, and just a couple of years ago, we all got together. I think there's only one guy was missing from when Kyle went into the Hall of Fame. He hosted a thing at a restaurant up there and pizza place, and they were all there. And just visiting like it was yesterday. And I don't think I could put together a group like that. It just, credit to their parents, credit to the whole community that they were developed like that and could go out and win. And they all had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think, every time we communicate with each other, I think there's always that bond of, there's one thing that no one can ever take away from us, and that's that we're a state champion. It doesn't matter how old we get. It doesn't matter where we go. When we communicate with each other, there's that sense of we did something remarkable, and to get back and have the reunion with the whole team was excellent. I'm so glad that they were able to put that on. And just to be around those guys. And we were actually able to get back together again a year, maybe 2 years later, when Kyle got inducted into the Hall of Fame. That was special to be able to be there and witness him doing that and getting to hang out with those guys again, because, Kyle had mentioned it to us, but I think we all felt a sense of pride in him and what he was able to accomplish, knowing that we shared a small part of it. It was a lot of his hard work, but it felt like he led us along for the journey of his career and his success, and that was just extremely meaningful to myself, and I think the rest of the guys.
Many of these players gone on to do special things in their lives and become very special people, as we've come to find out.
Then the kids that went on to the character of those kids, of course, Kyle went on to play at Iowa, and then Ben went on to play at Orange City, Northwestern. Went on and he made All-American. He was, I think, a national championship at least once. Maybe I think they were in the championship twice. And then, of course, Jeff Finn. He's a successful school teacher. I'm going to lose track of some of these guys, but you take a look at the Owens boys. Both of those kids played next level football, and they're successful men. And and Ryan Taylor is a CPA now. He's working auditing different places. But anyway, it's a lot of memories, a lot of good people.
Ben Gerleman went on to play basketball at Northwestern in Orange City, where he won a national championship there, then went on to become a state championship basketball coach with George Little Rock. Kyle McCann played football and started at quarterback for Hayden Fry and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Jeff Finn continued to play basketball at Grinnell. Brady Steenhoek went on the baseball route after high school, and Eric Owens played offensive line for Southwest Missouri State. This means all 5 starters for the Panthers that night ended up as college athletes.
I just wanted, I would say that,
Coach
obviously we as players got a lot of recognition. Coaches probably got a lot of credit. But it's the players that were there with us that didn't get to go through it, that I hope felt like they were part of it. From my older brother Brian's class, who let us in and let us be a part of them, to the John David Webbers and the Will Carrolls and the Mark Jacksons and the Kelly Keenans, to them helping us kind of get over the hump and get to state, plus all the community members that supported us. It was truly a team and a town effort. And I hope that they all feel as special about it as we did.
I would just say how happy I was for a bunch of good kids. They came back for the 20-year reunion, in 2017, right? And it was a Red Oak game. Coach Phipps arranged it, and it was so fun to see them all as adults. Now they're raising their own kids, and they just got together and reminisced. I think what sticks out a little bit is how much fun they had on the bus and stuff, because Steenhoek told me, this is a different era. They didn't have cell phones. They couldn't sit on their cell phone and scroll things and text people. They just had each other. And, so whether they were singing or just goofing around, the bonds they created as a group, it was still with them 20 years later when you got to see them. And the crowd that night, 20 years later, still gave him an ovation. It was really rousing.
Gerleman was right. This team was a team of destiny during their years and even after. They did so many things, but he would be remiss if he didn't mention certain people who made this entire state championship very possible.
I guess I would like to thank all the moms of these players. I haven't done that in live interview, but they're real special, and to have sons like that, and a couple of them, have lost part of their family, and the fathers, and Eric Owens lost his dad a few years ago, and Kyle McCann lost his father, Steve, and they were always at the games and supported with the kids, and it took a whole village to get this type of thing put together, and to be a winner, and we'll always remember it.
So when you think of one word to describe the 1997 state championship Creston Boys Basketball team, I think Ben said it best at the very beginning. Special seems to fit nicely.